Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget for all your fine quality kayak fishing accessories. Go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. And the 153 Bait Company for all your hard and soft bait needs. Go to the 153angler.com. So join with me as together we dive into the tips and techniques that will help make us better anglers out on the water. Welcome back to the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment here on the Paddle and Fin Podcast. I am your host, Sean Lavery, and I'd like to welcome everybody back for the second episode of the Noobs Show for this new year of 2022. I hope everybody is having a good year so far. Hope you maybe, got out to fish a little bit. We had some exceptionally warm weather in PA over the New Year's weekend, so I did make it out to fish a little bit. Didn't have a ton of luck, but it was still nice to get out on the water. I figured I'd keep going with the kind of theme that I've been working on the last couple of episodes. We've been talking a lot about river fishing. We had Jeff Little on, and in a lot of Jeff Little's videos, he likes to, go out with other people, and that led me to reach out to tonight's guest. I had been, talking with him before. He helped me out with some advice for a tournament that I fished not too long ago that really helped me finish, probably my best tournament finish yet. So just bring him on and pick his brain about all things river fishing. He's a fellow Susky native. He lives a little bit further north than me, but not super far at all. So we fish a lot of the same water, and can't wait to hear all his input. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jake Harshman to the show.
Welcome, how you doing?
Jake. Good.
Hey, how are you?
Well, again, for the folks that aren't as familiar with you, do you want to just let them know who you are, kind of where you're from, and we can go from there.
All right. Well, my name is Jake Harshman. I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm originally from the western side of the state, out near Pittsburgh. Go Steelers! Big Ben just played his last game at Heinz Field. But I grew up fishing with my grandparents, or with my grandpa and my uncle and my dad. We would go out on the boat and stuff like that. But we always fished for walleye and perch and honestly anything that bit, really. But we were fishing for food. So, that's how I grew up fishing. And I did a lot of wading in the river fishing for trout back home.
Okay.
But I didn't catch the bass bug, man, probably 2013, 2014, I caught the bass bug. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. I bought a kayak. I bought my first kayak, and I started fishing. And after that, man, it's just been a deep, deep hole of money and time spent.
I certainly understand how that goes, man. I'm surprised I'm still happily married at times. But,
yeah, happily is a strong word.
She affords me a lot of grace. I'll just put it at that. So
yeah.
So was that in Pittsburgh that in that side of the state that you picked up bass fishing, or was it
no,
not
it was
until
here.
You came over? Okay.
Yeah, it was here. I think the first lake I ever fished was Marburg out of my kayak.
Okay.
And I went out, and I don't think I caught a dang thing. And then, after that, but I mean, I enjoyed being on the water. Even if I wasn't fishing, I was enjoying the kayak aspect of it. But after that, it was like, I got to do more of this. I got to go here, and I got to try this Susquehanna River that everyone keeps talking about. And I fell in love with that. I think that might be the only reason why I still live here, to be honest with you. But
well, I actually grew up literally 5 minutes from the river and didn't start fishing until my 30s. So I feel like I wasted so much time. I'm like, I could be like, imagine if I would have started when I was younger, how much better I could be by now. But, hindsight's 2020, of course. So, and so what made you get into kayak fishing? Just access to the water, or,
I was battling some demons with my inner self, and I played a lot of golf, and that didn't help. Golf made me more angry than it did happy, I think. So after I picked up kayak fishing and really just fishing in general, I think I became a lot happier.
Okay.
But
I do a lot with Heroes on the Water, and that's a huge thing with them about how therapeutic, just kayaking and kayak fishing is. It helps a ton of people deal with, some really strong emotions and, some tough times. So
Yeah.
for sure, I can understand how, that would be. That's kind of why I got into it as well. Although mine was more health reasons than anything else. But
Yeah.
cool, man. So would you say the Susquehanna is your favorite place to fish, or have you fished other places you like more?
So I would be hard pressed to not put Lake Seminole, Georgia, or the Flint River in there.
Okay.
Because that's honestly where I've had my greatest accomplishment to date in kayak fishing was Lake Seminole in 2020. Being able to win that event and then go back this past year and take 8th place out of 175. The Flint River and that little piece of Georgia there has a special place in my heart. I love that down there, but it's nothing is like the Susquehanna River.
I was just going to ask that. How does it compare?
I mean, you'll hear people talk about the New River, and you'll hear people talk about, the St. Lawrence River and the big smallmouth up there and stuff like that. But when you get a 4.5, 5 pound smallmouth that lives in 1.5 feet of water that jumps 5 feet in the air, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. The Susquehanna River is pound for pound one of the absolute best fisheries in the country. And the greatest thing about it, most bass boats won't go on it.
Right. Unless you have a jet boat, you're not getting to most of the places. But yeah.
So
right. And some, there's, for the longest time, I totally took that for granted that I lived next door to, one of the best places in the world to smallmouth fish, and it wasn't until I started, talking to people all over the country and kind of listening to their stories and, some of their struggles that I realized, what I actually have it, in my backyard basically. And I'm definitely super thankful for it. So
it took me a few months to develop the courage to go out and explore it on my own because, it's big,
right.
It's a mile wide in most places, not having the paddling experience and really just the experience in general in a kayak. It took me a while. I was like, okay, well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and go do it. And when I went and did it was November and I almost flipped and I was like, oh God, like that would have been terrible.
Yeah.
But, it would, I had a pedal drive and it was locked down. And that was when I had the Old Town Predator PDL and it got, wedged up on a rock and I was teetering doing that number down around Goldsboro area. And I was like, this is going to be bad if I go in like this. I'm probably going to die. Water temperature is like right around high 40s. I'm not going to last long. So, but I didn't have a dry suit then, I was doing that nonsense, but yeah. And but after that, man, that next summer, I really kind of devoted my time to learning the river. And then I got hooked up with Jeff. And if anybody that gets to fish with Jeff Little for any period of time, let alone the amount that I get to fish with him, they're going to learn stuff. All you got to do is just sit back, watch, and listen. Because he's going to be talking about something and you're going to be like, ding, ding, ding. That's what I've been missing. And he's just talking to himself or he's just talking to talk. And I mean, that's the stuff that you don't see. Some of the stuff you don't see on his videos is that kind of stuff. And it's like an epiphany just happens. And you're like, oh God, I've been missing that for however long,
Right. Right. We've been lucky enough to have him on twice. And I feel like, even after we're done recording the show, I talk to him, I pick his brain as much as I possibly can. I'm like, oh man, sorry, I kept you for another 45 minutes, even after we're done recording. But he just loves to share what he knows. And, he's so generous and gracious with that knowledge that, he will just continue to talk and, just spill his guts on everything. And that was kind of actually what I liked about your videos as well, too, is that you're not shy at all about, hey, this is where I'm fishing. This is what I'm using. This is how I'm doing it. And that has been super helpful to me, because there isn't, a lot of secrets there. I mean, sure, there's stuff you keep for yourself, but for the most part, you are, just super upfront with everything that you're doing. You're like, hey, this is everybody's river. If you can come
You
to these
have to
places.
be. You have
Yeah,
to be. Like, fishing is about teaching. It's about growing. It's about learning. People who fish are generally not selfish people. My
right.
opinion.
No,
I mean, I've
no,
not met many selfish people on the water. Now, I've met selfish people that have glitter boats and stuff like that, but that's a little joke there. But it's I love to fish, and I want people to enjoy fishing. I also want people, and the biggest thing I want is people to respect the resource that we have. And this river is special, and if we keep it that way, it's going to be special for ages. Um, what we can't have is we can't have the pollution and the damage to the waterways that we have, and we can't have the flathead problem. I encourage everybody to go out there and keep some flatheads because they're eating smallmouth. But yeah, I mean, I want people to fish. I mean, there's a couple places that I don't talk about in video, and um, there's reasons for that. But there very, very few things do I keep hidden, and
right.
I think a lot of that I got from Jeff. I took that that step from Jeff because he doesn't hide anything. As a matter of fact, I know that Jeff and last year, right before the Hobie BOS, Jeff had put out a video of the pattern on the river, and I know I called him and a couple other people called him. We're like, "Yo, what like what are you doing?" It's like we got a pretty big tournament getting ready to happen, but
Right.
that's what Jeff does, and I respect that. Like he teaches, so but it's fun, man. I love fishing. I love
Yeah.
fishing. That's all there is to it.
I think this is the perfect place then, because there's pretty much nothing I love more than fishing, and I can talk fishing with anybody, and I clam up socially a lot, but fishing is one of the few things that I feel like I can, if I can find somebody and that's the common topic, I feel like I'm a totally different person. So
Yeah,
cool.
agree.
So, well, while I have you on here, I might as well, pick your brain as much as I can about river fishing. There's a lot of stuff to learn. But what would you say if you were, giving advice to a beginning fisherman, like someone who's first laid eyes on the Susky? Where do you tell them to start? What are they looking for? What kind of baits would you start with?
So, I'll highlight about 6 baits and what I'm gonna kind of go by season. In that early part of in the early part of the season, we're talking like March, April, when the water's still cold. Um, I like to mix it up between basically like a Ned rig, a jerk bait, and a spinner bait. I love a spinner bait in the springtime. But that Ned rig, I feel like I get bit the best in that early spring. If you put it into a pre-spawn area or a spawning area where there's going to be fish, staging and stuff like that, right outsides, around the creek mouths and stuff like that. You find a current break and you throw a Ned rig in there. They want to eat it, and that's kind of like that's my go-to bait at that time of year, and that's what I'll start with. Something crawfish profile, basically. Whenever I'm talking about a Ned rig, I'm talking about a little crawfish profile. But that spinner bait bite, as soon as that water temperature gets at around that 50-degree mark, man, I keep a spinner bait in my hand until it's time for top water. Like that spinner bait bite, a Susquehanna smallmouth will do some dirty, nasty things to a spinner bait. They don't care. Like they just want it to die. And there's a couple really good ones that are made here locally that Snagler Tackle Company, Sick Custom Baits. They make some really solid local spinnerbait colors that do really well on the river here. And that's kind of what that's that will normally go into that post spawn. They kind of get into a funk around that early to, really the month of June. It's tough. It's tough to catch them, like they don't really want to expend a lot of energy. They just want to recover. If you can find a pile of post spawn females, you get them. That's about the only time that they're long and skinny and they just look beat up and like they're near death. I don't like to mess with them though, that much. Honestly, like that time, that post spawn time, I really try to stay away from the river just because I want those fish to recover. So, I kind of go from like that spinnerbait bite in the springtime, and then I jump into that summertime. Summertime's a toss up because I know a lot of guys love a jackhammer, and the jackhammer works fantastic in the river. There's like two colors that I throw in the river. There's green pumpkin and then there's golden shiner. Those two colors I do really well with, but the spinnerbait bite's still there. But I think what I have more success on that, early part of the summer is a very shallow diving crankbait. When they'll eat top water, but a lot of times they swipe at it and they just kind of swat at it to make it, go away. And you end up, catching a lot of them on the outside of the mouth. If you switch that up to just like a subsurface crankbait like that, the one I'm impartial to is the Rapala DT Fat 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll throw it in real shallow water. I'll throw it in less than a foot of water, but I just run that thing, and I tend to have a lot of success on that early in that, that right after that post spawn time frame. When the summer heat sets in, dude, it's a top water. It's ridiculous. Like, you take a whopper plopper or a spook or something, or any kind of walking bait or any bait that just, makes noise on the surface, and you run that down a current seam, and I mean, you can basically call your shots out here with it,
I fell in love with the Rico popper this year, and I was amazed. And certain times of night, like if I happened to be fishing right when the sun kind of got down below the horizon for whatever reason, it was almost every cast. It was just amazing and huge fish. Like
the cicadas helped out with that this year.
Yes, and the mayfly hatch, of course, is always a good time for that too.
I mean,
if you can stand it,
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like I'll go out and fish until dark, especially where I love to fish at City Island anyway because it's like 10 minutes from my house. But I like to go down there and fish around the lights at nighttime, the lights on the bridge piers.
Yep.
It's wild because the fish are they really go off on top water, and a lot of times like the morning bite's not that great in the morning time,
right.
Like early morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they gorge themselves on mayflies all night long, so it's like you have to really, I don't know, like they'll still eat, they'll always eat, but that topwater bite in the summertime is something special, and that'll go all the way into the fall. The fall is fantastic topwater, and whenever it gets to the fall time, I normally throw like a whopper plopper 130.
Okay, so it's a little bigger of the whopper.
Yeah,
plopper, right?
I want, because at that point in time, I'm not interested in catching a 15-inch fish. When October rolls around, I don't care about a 15-inch fish. I've probably caught a lot of those already out of the river.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm looking for is that, big old grandma with the fat belly feeding up for the winter. And, those bigger fish they'll do something special with a 130. Same way with like a 6-inch bull shad. That's another good fall time bait that I love to fish. And people are like, "You're throwing a 6-inch bull shad for smallmouth?" And I'm like, "These are Susquehanna smallmouth. Like, there's no limit as to what they'll try to eat. They'll eat the biggest fish they can fit in their mouth." And they do. A big smallmouth trophy class fish will definitely do some, damage on a 6-inch bull shad. But again, that plopper 130, it has a another thing too is most people don't throw that. So by the time fall comes, you're producing a different sound and a different profile than what they've seen all year. A lot of people go out and throw the 90 because they think smallmouth, small mouths, and they'll throw the 90 all summer long. I hardly ever throw 90. I don't think I even have any 90s that I take with me. That's a lie. I have 190. It's called Pac-Man, and that's because I don't think they make it in a 130. But the one, or the 110. The 110 is really my go-to.
Okay.
The typical size for the whopper plopper. And for like a walking bait or a spook type bait, it's something, 5 inches normally is what I try to go with. An evergreen shower blow is really good. But the jackhammer, of course, will work basically from 45 degrees to 45 degrees. You can catch them all year long on it, but in the wintertime, when that water gets down into the 40s, I generally try to throw something that moves a lot less and that I don't care if it gets hung up. I mean, sure, I could bounce a jackhammer across the bottom, but I'm really not trying to lose a bunch of $15 jackhammers.
Right.
But
do you switch up your trailers on those, or you kind of stick to one trailer or no trailer, or what's your thoughts on that?
Jackhammer trailers it's mostly a Yamamoto Seiko.
Okay.
Yeah, almost always a Yamamoto Seiko. I've tried the Z-Man imitation of the Seiko. I think it's called the Razor Shad.
Mm-hmm.
I personally do not feel like it gets the same action. It doesn't have the same kick and everything else like that. The Seiko is my jackhammer trailer. If I want to make it bigger, I'll put a bigger swim bait on there, but I like to try to keep it to something that doesn't have a paddle tail. I don't like the paddle tail trailer because I feel that it takes my feel away from the bait. When I'm reeling that bait through the water, I like to feel that blade moving back and forth. If I got a paddle tail on there, I don't always feel that. Sometimes you'll feel the paddle tail kick, but I just feel like it takes away from the action of the blade a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's, the wintertime, once the wintertime sets in, man, it's back to a Ned rig or a hair jig. The hair jig right now is the bait. That's about, I'm not going to say that's all you're going to catch them on, but that's what most people are using right now is a hair jig or a blade bait.
Mm-hmm.
The jerk bait obviously works in the that 40-degree range. I'm not a good jerk bait fisherman.
I'm not either.
Jeff has pulled his hair out trying to teach me how to fish a jerk bait in the river. And I'll get lucky every once in a while and catch one on it, but it's not my first choice. But, it's that what you're looking for in that wintertime is that passive action, something that's not moving, sitting still, but still moving. And that's why that hair jig works really well, because you can sit that hair jig on a bottom, the hair is moving, but the jig itself is staying put. And, to the fish, they'll sit there and look at it for a few minutes and be like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to eat it. And then they finally eat it. And, then it just repeats all over again. It's a cycle, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But
no, that was one of the things we actually talked to Jeff at, and John Tostos, him, Fish Yacker. We talked to him about hair jigs as well. Definitely something that I'm just starting to scratch the surface with, of learning, to be patient enough to use one of them effectively. Because I went from, running and gunning, I fell in love with the lipless crankbait this year in the fall, because I really was doing well with that over top of the grass and stuff, kind of ripping it through the grass. But then as soon as that bite died off, I kind of, got lost until I, started playing around with the hair jigs a little bit and then started to pick things back up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not partial to any one brand of hair jigs. Honestly, most of the hair jigs that I throw, somebody normally tied them and they've given them to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a few Hollywood hair jigs that I like. And the reason why I like Hollywood hair jigs is just because they're local and they try to match the hatch. They try to make that color, those colors match, what those guys are catching or have caught in the river for years. So, when our crayfish start turning into a certain color, whatever time of year that is, they try to match that. And that's really what I try to get in that point in time. But any hair jig will work, as long as it's some sort of hair that's going to move. And if you can find a good hair jig with a weed guard to keep it from getting snagged, you're going to save yourself a lot of patience. You're going to be like,
I was going to say, I tend to go through hair jigs a little faster than some things. Even Ned rigs, I've, started to get a little bit better, but I usually with Ned rigs, I can rig them kind of, Texas hook them kind of, so that it doesn't get hung up quite as much. But
so the only way I throw a Ned rig now is on an owner blockhead, which is an EWG hook.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically makes it weedless. I don't throw any exposed hook Ned rigs anymore. I just lost too many of them.
No, I've definitely done that too until I started rigging it that way. And
yeah,
I had heard about the blockhead as well. I just haven't picked any of them up yet. I'm kind of burning through my stash of.
Yeah. I know. I'm thinking locally. I'm trying to think locally who has them. I know Susquehanna Fishing Tackle has them here locally.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Hoghead Bait and Tackle outside of Pinchot has them as well. But, anywhere you can go online and find the blockhead, it's worth its weight. Whatever you pay for them, that honestly, it's the absolute best Ned rig bait, in my opinion, that's on the market. Super sharp hook, doesn't get snagged up easy with the block style head. The line tie angle is right. Everything is done right on that bait. I do know that Z-Man came out with one that's similar this year.
Mm-hmm.
Their hook shank is not as long as the blockhead is.
Okay.
Obviously, you can get different sizes, but I feel like the Z-Man, I think they're all basically one size hook, and they're a little bit shorter, which could be good or bad in some instances. But I have a hard time switching from the blockhead because I like it so much. So I always have a little box of blockheads and some Ned rigs on there because they'll work all year long. But
I was going to say, I know you mentioned that you mostly do crawl profile with your Neds. Is that is pretty much all year round?
So the Ned rig, in my opinion, is a crawfish profile.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you make it a TRD or if you use a TRD crawl or.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you could maybe get away with saying, okay, well, this is designed to look like a bait fish, but not the way I fish it. The way I fish a Ned rig is on the bottom. I don't normally reel the Ned rig through the water. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to throw something different, like a little swim bait or something like that. But, whenever I'm fishing a Ned rig, I'm trying to look like a crawfish. So that's kind of what I mean in those terms.
Gotcha.
And it's the same way with the crankbait too. When I'm throwing that shallow diving crankbait, they always look like crawfish.
So you're cranking that pretty slow then, or no pretty fast? Okay.
No, a lot of times I burn it.
Okay.
That shallow diving crankbait, I'll burn it because
it's more like a scurrying crayfish then, I guess, is what you're shooting.
Yeah, it's the weather's warm, the water temperature is getting warmer. If you go out there in the river and you look, like, you see crayfish just scattering everywhere. You step into water and bzz, 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 like crayfish just going everywhere, and that's kind of what I like to look like at that time of the year. That right after June, most of July this year, I threw I probably went through 4 or 5 of them, and not because I was losing them, because I was breaking them,
wearing them out.
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 of them that are so gouged up on the side because they're a balsa wood,
Yep.
They're so gouged up on the side, like they don't even run right anymore. One of them I broke the bills off, and God, there was another one. I think I jammed it up against a rock and it broke the bill off, and I brought just the bill back. But but that bait it works. That DT Fat 3 is. I'm not going to talk about the color. I'm not going to do that. But the DT Fat 3, if you can figure out whatever color that looks like a crawfish, you'll figure it out. But I'm not talking about the specific color.
No worries.
People would be upset with me if I did
that. We just had Matt Gibson on not too long ago, and he's a big balsa bait guy, and he kind of got me started with that. Actually hooked me up with a couple of very shallow diving crankbaits. So I'm really looking forward to trying out. I kind of got them a little late in the season this year to use them, but I'm super looking forward to them next year. So
a baby 1- too. And when you're fishing shallow water, that man's baby 1-, like I'm talking like 1.5 foot rapids, casting that bad boy up there and bringing it down through some rapids. That's another one that looks really good. That works really well.
That was an expensive lesson for me to learn too, to not use a KVD 1.5 in those shallow 1 foot rapids, because I lost quite a few of them. You'd think, I can just go get that back, but sometimes when you're sitting in that 1 foot current full of rocks, it's not the easiest thing to get out.
It was funny. Like, it's funny that you mentioned the 1.5. I had it wasn't this year, but it was the year before. We had some high water, and I went way up in the Conneaguinnet, like way, way up. And I was throwing a 1.5 in just like a red craw pattern. It was a springtime. Dude, I wore them out. Like, I ruined 2 sets of treble hooks on fish that day. I probably caught, I would say 40 smallmouth, and I was up there for like 6 hours. Dude, I mean, I was just wearing them out.
That's awesome.
It was like every cast. Boom, 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 boom. And they were just destroying it. And man, that's it. It has its place. It's a good bait, but yeah, maybe not in less than 1 foot of water. That's that bill will get down in there and just dig.
Oh yeah.
But
and that you talk about wearing out baits, and my Puerto Rico popper from last year, luckily that's one you can get back almost all the time because it floats. But by the end of the year, it started out like silver on the top with the chartreuse belly, and by the end of the year it was completely dull silver, missing an eye. One of the barbs on the hooks was broken off, but it was still catching fish left and right. So
those hooks, those hooks that come stock on the Rico are sharp.
Yes,
dude, they're nothing to mess with. Those Rico hooks I don't know what hooks they use, but whatever hooks they use, those things are sharp.
So I retired that one at the end of the season just because it had such an amazing season. It's hanging on my wall up in the garage as a trophy because I can't even count how many fish I caught on it. But yeah, it was just amazing. So
Jeff and I went out early in the summer, and we took it was right around the cicada show up whenever they arrived. And we went out with smaller topwaters like that. I don't think either one of us attempted to throw a popper because we were moving a little bit too fast for the popper to work it. But we were throwing that 90 and 75 whopper plopper. Dude, we had a day. Like we both of us together, I think each of us had 90, 92, 93 inches. Like we had a day. I mean, and it was a blast. Like it was top water all day long. From the time we started to the time it ended.
That's awesome.
All day long. And small, those small top waters just around all them cicadas and stuff. And I kind of feel like the topwater bite this year was good earlier than normal. Like it'll be good, but this year was just kind of seemed better because of the cicadas.
Right. No, that definitely made a difference. I was lucky enough to fish both the cicada hatch and the mayfly hatch, a couple of different mayfly hatches actually, and both times were just absolutely lights out on top. So
yeah, that's what they do, man. Then bugs start flying across. They start eating them top waters really good. But If you know, another thing too, if you have you ever caught any fish in the Susquehanna that have like gouges out of the top of their back?
I've seen pictures of it before. I don't think I've ever personally caught one, but
so when I start catching them like that, that's kind of whenever I know that they're looking for top water, because that basically means they're in super shallow water, or that means that they're up near the surface, because what's happening is the birds are coming down to try to get them.
Gotcha.
The birds of prey are coming down to try to get, pick them up with the top of their backs. And you'll see it. You'll catch a bunch of smaller fish that have, marks on the top of their back. And then you'll find a big one that just has like a gouge in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, what the hell is happening to these fish? But it's they're up in the water column, or they're in real shallow water.
Right.
And, if they're in real shallow water and you bring a topwater over their head, they almost have no option but to eat it. Their natural instincts are like, you're invading my space, I'm going to kill you. And that's what they try to do. But if they're up in the water column, that's when that's when I'll really, if I see that, I'm like, okay, I need to be throwing top water. They're all up, they're coming up. So,
and like you said earlier, they will absolutely annihilate it, blow it out of the water, feet in the air. It's insane. It's an aerobatic show, to be sure.
Dude, I had one knock a 110 like 2 feet in the air and then come back for it this year. It was kind of insane. But,
until that happens, and oh my gosh, that gets your heart pumping, and I got to really try and calm down after I see that, because it makes me just want to go about 100 million miles per hour, because trying to replicate that sometimes gets you really going, man.
That's the deal though, especially in the river. Like, you'll see me in the summertime. It's funny, like, if people will say like, hey, let's go fishing together. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm all for fishing with people. And then, go out there and go fishing. And I'll look and I'm like, where did they go? Because in the summertime, I'm covering water, man. I'm 100 miles an hour, just, boom, 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 boom. And they're just like kind of trying to have a leisurely day of fishing. And I'm like, no, dude, like, we gotta catch a big smallmouth. Like, I cover a ton of water in the summertime just with that top water bait, trying to search for them big fish. And dude, do you watch any of my YouTube videos?
Pretty much all of them.
Okay. So one of the Save JT, I think it might've been the volume 3, but it was a 2-part video. I think I started out that day throwing a crankbait. And then at the end of the day, dude, I got on a topwater frenzy. Like, I had fish that were just wolf packing this bait all the way back to the side of the boat. There was one point I had the bait just sitting on the water, like off the edge of my boat, on near the edge of the water. And this fish came up and just tried to get it. And I'm like, oh God, and I scared this shit out of me. I was like, what the heck? So I was like, man. So then I watched it. And you could watch it happen as you're pulling the bait down, like you see them just coming up and you see your bait just moving. You're like, the current's not doing that. The current isn't moving the bait up out of the water. Like, that's those fish coming up, fighting for it, knocking it out of the water.
Right.
And that happened for it was like 20 minutes that it was going on like that. It just over and over and over and over and over. And I think that in that 20-minute time frame, I probably caught like anywhere from 10 to 15 fish, and I think 5 of them were over like 18. Like, I didn't even measure most of them. You know what I mean? But when you pick up these smallmouth after you grab so many and hold so many, you're like, yeah, that's a quality fish. That's an 18. And that's what I consider a quality fish in this river. Anything over 18 is a quality fish.
Right.
And it was, they were like that. And I think it was like 5, I'd have to look at the video, but there was at least 5 of them that were over 18 in that short period.
I do remember, seeing that. I, wouldn't be able to pick out which episode it was, but I remember seeing that. And
yeah, that was a fun day. Like, that was.
I've had similar experiences. I fish sometimes, depending what I'm, if I'm fun fishing or, trying to be a little more serious. If I just want to catch fish, sometimes I'll throw like a little a rooster tail or something like that, because sometimes I slam on them. And one time I I think I was fishing a popper or something out in front of me, but I had one of my other rods laying down on my kayak with the rooster tail probably about like 3 inches out of the water. And I almost lost that rod because a smallie came up, jumped out of the water, grabbed that rooster tail and took it down. And my rod starts going off the side of my kayak. I'm like,
It probably looked like a bug to them.
Yeah.
It looked like a bug. So they were coming up for it.
I was like, holy cow. But, yeah, that's the kind of thing that it's just, you see it so many times and you experience it, and it just lets you know that it's a special kind of place. So
a lot of people sleep on that rooster tail, man. A lot of people that like that's whenever they won't eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when they won't eat anything, they'll eat a rooster tail.
Yeah, no, and that I forget who first told me about it, but I was having like an awful day. I couldn't catch anything, and I just happened to pass a guy, and he's like, "Oh man, I just caught like 20." And I'm like, "What the heck are you throwing?" And he showed me, and I was like, "That's what you're throwing, just that little rooster tail." He's like, "Sure." And I think he actually gave me one, and I was like, "Oh man!" And then from there on out, that was interesting. And I've caught like catfish on that thing. In the river, a million things will eat a rooster tail.
It looks like a small bait fish, and when you go out in the Susquehanna, especially if you're out there a lot and you see like some of our bait fish. Most of our bait fish are only like that big. They don't really make it. They don't get big because they get eaten first. You know what I mean? So like those bait fish are small. If you go get something like a bait fish profile like that and you're throwing that around, man, like they will eat it. And that's a trout bait. I mean, that's a trout bait. Let's be honest.
Right.
That's what trout fishermen throw. But that's what
you talk to some of the old timers around me, and they're like, "Oh, all you need is a jig head with a curly tail grub on it. That's all you need to fish on the river." Yeah. And they're right. You can catch a million fish on a curly tail grub. Maybe not the biggest fish.
It's not all fun. Like it's not a fun way to fish.
No, for sure. And I, that's actually one of my earliest memories of fishing on the river. My father-in-law had a bass boat, and that's what we would do. We would just go out and troll like as low as you could get the trolling motor on, troll curly tailed grubs on a jig head, and just pick them off left and right, one after the other.
The Juniata River is good for that. If you want to go out and catch fish on a curly tail grub, I feel like everything in the Juniata River looks like a curly tail grub because you'll catch everything. I mean, from an 8-inch smallmouth to a 22-inch smallmouth. That's what, like the Juniata is just, it's full of fish that'll eat a curly tail grub. I don't know. We probably make it more difficult than we have to in the river, but it's fun when you catch them on a big bait.
Oh yeah.
Like when you catch them on like a big swim bait. Another one is a mag draft that I really like, a 6-inch mag draft. Oh,
I've heard you talk about that in your videos, and I've never thrown one, but I started looking at them and I was like, I might have to try that. So.
Dude, the way they eat a 6-inch mag draft, like it's a long, slender bait. You know what I mean? But you'll catch them on it and they swallow it, like they inhale it, and you're like where are you going to put this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it's wild, man. The way they eat a big bait here is just insane. Did you see that walleye I caught on top water?
Yes.
That was on a Whopper Flopper 110.
Yep.
So
walleyes are another fun thing about the Susquehanna. The first time I caught one, I was like, this is the stupidest looking trout I ever saw, or the bass rather. And I posted pictures on Facebook like a dummy, and somebody's like, that's not a bass. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
When I caught that smallmouth. When I caught that walleye on the Whopper Flopper, I thought for sure at that minute I had won the tournament. That fish, it was a giant. It was at least 28 inches long because it hung over the side, like it hung over 2 inches over the side of my catch board. So it was at least 28 inches long. I mean, give or take a quarter inch, whatever. But it was a big, grown adult walleye, and it hit on top water. And as soon as it hit, like I knew it was a big fish. I was like, man, this is big. And then it was digging and it wouldn't come up. It just kept digging and digging and digging. And I think I was in like 6 feet of water. but I couldn't see it for the longest time. And then finally it come up and I'm like, oh, that's not a smallmouth. What's a walleye doing hitting top water in the middle of the day? Because like somebody figure out that, I don't know. But
Well, I've had that with catfish too. Like catfish will hit a crankbait and I'll think, oh my gosh, I got a huge bass.
Yeah.
And then it'll just keep digging, like you say. And then I'm like, I bet you it's a catfish. And then sure enough, you know, you get it up and your line's all slimy and snotty and you're like, yep.
I normally get pissed off whenever I catch a catfish because it normally means that I've just ruined a $8+ spinnerbait, or you know, I've had flatheads bend out the hooks on jackhammers.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've had flatheads ruin my, you know, the treble hooks on a crankbait a million times. I'm like,
yeah, flatheads for me, flatheads don't get put back in the river. They normally take a boat ride with me, and yeah, flatheads don't make it back. But you know, it's a fun fishery, man. The Susquehanna is, you know, it's a special place. You know,
what's your thoughts on grass? When I first started fishing the river, I steered clear of it, and only because I got so frustrated with the baits that I was throwing, having to clean them off constantly. But the more I have learned, the more I, you know, target grass. And that, like the lipless this year in the grass, you know, as much it is sometimes, you know, it's a pain to be constantly cleaning off the grass. That's where they are. And I think I had some of my best success this fall fishing the grass flats with the lipless. So
for me, the grass is good. If you ever come up on a patch of grass, don't cast. Just a couple times, don't cast. Just cruise around it and look and see what's in that grass. All the bait fish are in that grass.
Right. Yes.
There's so many bait fish in that grass. And especially like you know, in the Juniata, which is normally packed full of grass on the low end, and you know, anywhere downriver that has that long, stringy, you know, eelgrass type stuff. If you find a patch of it, get yourself a Texas rig fluke, 5-inch fluke, or caffeine shad, Strike King caffeine shad, Texas rig it, bury that hook in there, and just work it slow through that grass, and it's going to be fun. It's going to change your life.
That was one of the I remember talking to George at Susquehanna Fishing Tackle and commenting how frustrated I was fishing the grass, and he let me in on that little secret. He said a fluke, a fluke is going to get you through that, and sure enough, he was right. So
100%, man, that fluke in the grass, anytime where, when there's grass and especially that stringy shit that's so, man, it'll just.
It's so fragile. It breaks off so easy.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like any hook, I don't care what exposed hook it is. Any exposed hook will get caught on that eelgrass, and you'll pull back like 4 pounds of it. And that's why that caffeine shad or the fluke, obviously the Zoom makes probably the most well-known fluke, but I feel like the caffeine shad is, I know it's a slightly bigger profile, but I think it has a little bit better darting action. So that's, those two are the ones that I'll normally throw. But there's some local guys that make some nice flukes too. Undercover Baits, who's a local guy, he's out near Chambersburg.
Okay.
And then Snagler Tackle Company makes a nice fluke. But any jointed, slim bait like that, Texas rigged, is going to work really well through that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, but that's, if I'm fishing around grass, that's normally what I'm going to throw.
Cool. Are there times where you seek out the heavy current? I know we talk a lot about eddies and, the tails or bottoms of eddies and stuff like that. I know, especially right now, you're looking for those calmer pockets,
Right.
But are there times where I know they say, if you can fish the rising river, and the Susquehanna can get crazy. There's definitely times where it's downright insane to go out there.
Yeah, it's borderline unsafe most of the time. So mid-June through probably like the beginning of October, I really don't leave the fast water.
Okay.
Because those fish, the active fish, the eating fish are out there. That's where they're at because the water temperature is high. So meaning that, high in temperature, it's warm. Um, that faster water has more oxygen in it and it's cooler because it's moving. And most of the time they'll be out there until you get like the bluebird sunny sky, like the brightest day in July that you can find. You'll find them where they're cycling between that fast water and the shade. The shade is another place. But in the summertime, I'm fishing basically two areas. I'm either fishing in fast water or I'm fishing the shade. And it really, just kind of depends on the ambient conditions outside. If it's really, really super bright and sunny, and especially if it's a clear river, meaning that there's hardly any stain to it, I will be fishing shade because if it's clear, those fish are so susceptible to birds. The birds will come down and eat a lot of them. So they'll tend to go to the shade where they can blend in and hide better because they can't hide, not to a bird. They can't
Right.
hide. If you ever take a drone up and you put a drone up in some shallow water in the summertime when it's clean and clear, you're going to be like, holy shit, there's a lot of smallmouth in this river. But
well, I don't know how many times I've watched eagles just having a field day, just dive bombing left and right.
yeah,
And I'm like, hey, save some for me, man.
it's insane. But yeah, that summertime, man, that fast water is hard to beat, dude. Like, I mean, I've caught 20-inch fish in less than 6 inches of water. You find a nice little set of rapids, especially if the rapids if there's an area close that has shade or has some deeper boulder rock.
Mm-hmm.
If you normally you'll find the fish on the front side of whatever's causing the rapids. The more active fish will be up there eating. But the whole entire rapids will be good. And that's why it's so much fun to throw a topwater through there because you can just let the rapids push the topwater wherever you want it to go, and you're just reeling it back to you. But dude, they smash it. Pay attention to the front side of whatever's causing the water disturbance. Those fish will normally be, like it'll be flat and then it'll start coming up, which is where the disturbance starts. They'll be right in that little area right before where it turns up. That's kind of where they sit because it's actually they're not using as much energy as if they were behind the rock or because behind the rock the water's turbulent and moving all around, and they can get up there in front and really just get pick of whatever comes by first.
Yep. And that's actually where I first started with the Ned rig is chucking it right up in that, because it will actually stay there. It's one of the few places you can chuck a Ned rig that won't just immediately get taken down the current. It'll just hang out there, and 9 times out of 10, there's a fish sitting there.
Yep. My biggest smallmouth of the year came like that, and it was on a shallow diving crankbait, but it was on the front side of a small little section of rapids where there was a decent sized boulder up front, and he was just hanging out there and smashed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, fast waters, man, it's the deal. That in shade, a lot of people overlook shade, but shade, if you can find shade on this river in the summertime, you're normally going to find fish. So,
right. All right, man. Well, dude, we're getting close to an hour, so that was a ton of good information. Time goes fast when we're having fun, man. So
yeah, we can sit here and talk about fishing for another hour. So,
well, dude, thank you again for coming on. Where can the folks find you? I know, I'm definitely familiar with your YouTube channel, but where else? Where can they find you on YouTube, and what other social media do you frequent?
So primarily, like I don't do a whole lot on Facebook. I try to. I don't know. Everything I do is really from the Instagram platform and the YouTube platform. But YouTube is just, if you search Jake Harshman, you search my name, I'll come up. And then on the Instagram, it's pa.kayakbassin, BASSIN.
I'll definitely, after the show, I'll get you to shoot me some links to these, and I'll include them in the show notes for those folks who are listening and don't feel like writing it down or anything.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And how about sponsors? Anybody you want to shout out?
So yeah, the biggest one, and they've been with me and stuck with me for a while now, is Torqeedo. They make a fantastic motor, incredibly durable. It's top end of the price range for a reason. But the other
I've
one,
seen some of your innovative sportsman videos too, where you're checking out their stuff.
That's what I was just getting ready to talk about. Trey Leach is more than just Torqeedo accessories. Like, if you have an idea and you want it to become real, take it to Trey. Because if you don't have the mechanical ingenuity to do it, or if you don't have the tools to do it, he does. And I don't think there's anybody more creative than that man. Like, he can do whatever you want him to do. You give him a plan. Like, I'll go down there with a graphic and be like, here, I need this. And next thing you know, he produces something that's awesome. So, he's kind of like my right-hand man. Anytime I need something, that's my guy at Innovative Sportsman. And then Temple Fork Outfitters, who is my rod sponsorship. I actually just upgraded that this year to an ambassador level past pro staff. I've been using their rods now for a few years, and like the price point for what you get, I mean, the quality is fantastic, real good sensitivity, and just a really durable rod, which we need in this river.
Oh yeah.
And one of the biggest ones, and one of the ones that I promote the most because they're so daggone good to me, is the Dugout Bait and Tackle in Marietta, Georgia. They're geographically, they're not close to me, but anytime I need anything, that's who has it and who will get it to me. Like, they ship quicker than daggone Amazon most times. So
we have a few of our co-hosts on this podcast that are team members with Dugout, so we're definitely familiar with them here on Paddle.
And Jamie Koza is one of the biggest proponents for the kayak industry than of anybody. You could argue Fish USA and Fishing Online, but what the Dugout's doing right now for kayak stuff is, they've developed their own online series. And they've assembled, probably, I don't know how I got there, but they've assembled one of the absolute best teams in all of kayak fishing. So
it's definitely a who's who. I've seen that list quite a few times, and
that list it's daunting, especially whenever whenever you get offered to come on it, you're like, how do I fit? Like, where do I? Okay,
yeah,
but they're good people, man, and that's basically the people that. The biggest ones that support me, and Dakota Lithium and Wildwear America, or clothing apparel. They help me out quite a bit too. So, but that's it.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again for coming on, Jake. I appreciate it. Definitely look forward to having you on again sometime. Just whenever you want to come on, and you have a new. Something you figured out, definitely be interested in picking your brain. And
let's get together and go fishing, man.
I was going to say that too, man. We're so close. Most of the people I talk to are half the country away.
Right?
I'm like, I can't go down to Alabama. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
but I can definitely make it to Harrisburg. Yeah.
Well, how about we go to that special lake?
Oh, yeah, that where you helped me win that tournament on. That was nice.
Yeah. Let's go to that special lake one time this spring and see if we can't get on some giants.
That sounds like a plan to me, man.
Pennsylvania giants.
That was a pretty cool place.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's an honor to come on and talk to you guys anytime I get to. Especially considering the fact that I haven't been fishing much. So most of my content lately has been promotional, and it's very little fishing, unfortunately. But
that's kind of why I started doing this, was to make it through the slow times. I'm like, I got to do something all winter long, or I'm going to go crazy. I'm not that good of a cold water fisherman, so I got to do something to scratch my itch, and not go crazy. So
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem, bud. So, all right, guys. Well, this has been another episode of the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_n_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_n_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com